it's gonna be. L-U-P-E. Joy. Come on. Woo!
There's so many things to say right now. I got so much on my mind. Look at what is going down. How much higher can we climb? The system that we're living in depends on poverty and greed. But people don't need charity. It's justice that we need. There's disrepair. Hey, it's surrounding you and it's worse than it's ever been. We'll overcome the things they do. Yeah, we're halfway there, 'cause we know the truth, but living is another thing. We'll overcome the things they do. Lift your voice and sing. A change is coming our way. Step by step and day by day. And we'll live by all that we say. Step by step now come our way. There's war all around the world in the name of democracy.
So, by the way, somebody should do some research. Is that little horn lick at the beginning there, is that the same horn lick that's at the beginning of Kick Push? Because it sounds almost identical. And Lupe Fiasco does appear on both records, which brings up something that came up this morning. So I wrote a newsletter. I write a newsletter, and the newsletter came out today, and it was kind of all about lyrics and stuff like that. And it's also about the fact that, you know, like if it's July 4th and you're not like going anywhere, that would be me. So my son and I used to watch Independence Day every 4th of July because it's, you know, first of all, it's an example of successful presidential leadership, which is really hard to find. I mean, over the last X number of years, post-Obama, it's just like really difficult to sort of see effective. And I think Obama could have gotten us through that too. I mean, maybe not. He might have been talking to the aliens about like red lines or something. Maybe that wouldn't have worked. I'm going to draw a red line right here. I'm going to draw a red line right where you obliterated the White House. All right. But like, okay, I'm going to let that one ride, but nothing else. Anyway, we used to watch Independence Day. And, but anyway, we didn't this year. But I was thinking, you know, why don't people listen to the cast album of Hamilton? I mean, what could be more July 4th than that? Anyway, somebody wrote to me today and said that he had other things he wanted to say, but he said, did I consider Hamilton to be a rap musical? I should probably give out the phone number before I get into this. Sorry. By the way, it's all calls today, 888-720-WNPR. We already have two on the board. 888-720-9677. No guests, no topics, just you making phone calls. 888-720-WNPR. Okay, where was I? So this guy wrote in, and he said that did I consider Hamilton to be a rap musical? Because his sister says that she loves Hamilton, but she hates rap. And I think his sister is not alone. I mean, I don't know whether she's alone or not. She might have a rich and full life with lots of people around her. But I mean, I don't think his sister is unique, although she may be unique. I think a lot of people, there's a subset of the human race that says that, right? I loved Hamilton. I don't like rap. So somebody should come up with a playlist of 10 rap numbers that represent a kind of gentle bridge for that guy's sister and other people like her from Hamilton to the world of rap. So that's just something that's on my mind today, and I needed to get it off my chest. And here we go. The calls are starting to come in. There'll be lots of things to talk about today. So we'll start with Mark from Naugatuck. We also have Dave from Lake Como, Ohio. Mark, you're on the air.
Hey, Colin, we spoke on your last call-in show.
Yes, we did.
I asked you to open an envelope, but you didn't have it.
I've got the envelopes today.
Yes. All right.
So is that what you want me to do? You want me to open an envelope?
Yep, open the envelope.
So just to contextualize this a little bit, actually today I have because I didn't have an envelope last time, I overcorrected. I have beaucoup Mr. Carp envelopes. Beaucoup is the French word for hella. So I'm going to reach in. I'm just going to grab any Mr. Carp. So Mr. Carp is possibly the smartest person by some metrics. He is the smartest person I ever met or knew. I've known him since college. And so he does. He clips things out and he sends them to me. This is something. This is postmarked May 31st, so it may not be entirely up to date. The envelope I just pulled. I'm doing kind of a double blind thing here. I'm opening the envelope. You can hear that happening. But I also blindly picked this envelope from among others. Boy, it looks like it might be just one big, huge article. Let's see what it is. Okay, there's a lot of stuff from the New Yorker. It looks like he's clipped out a lot of stuff from the New Yorker. This is not from the New Yorker. Okay, this is interesting. Hot Type makes news. The last of its kind, a small-town newspaper in Colorado, is still slugging it out. And I think what this is about is a newspaper in, shall we say, I don't know how to pronounce this, Saguache, Colorado. And I think the point of this is that, they're using hot lead. That's what it is. So I can say something about this anyway, which is like hot lead is the process by which type used to be set. And for the most part, most newspapers transitioned over to that. I'm going to say somewhere in the 1970s, because offset came in, right? So offset printing came in basically, maybe even earlier than the 70s. But so it became possible essentially to send something to what was more or less a computer that would print out a strip of type that looked like, a column of type in a newspaper. So, but it used to be, when I went to work in the Hartford Courant, which is in 1976, there was still hot lead there because the advertising, for some reason or other, a lot of the ads that appeared in the newspapers were set in hot lead. And it always looked like A, kind of dangerous, and B, like maybe not the most OSHA. I mean, it just seemed like there were like fumes and weirdness and stuff like that. So anyway, this is an article from Mr. Karp. It appeared in the Smithsonian. It is the last linotype-produced newspaper in the United States and perhaps in the world. So I don't know. Mark, what would you say about this? Although I think one thing that our show likes, we like defunct technologies or technologies that are in the process of becoming defunct. Like we should do a show pretty soon, Mr. McPants, about phone booths, because I don't know, like we maybe in some of our lifetimes, the last few phone booths will just go out of existence. And so this is something I like celebrating a technology that, is either gone or almost gone. But the idea that there's one newspaper, I have to read this whole article and it would take too long to read it while people are waiting on the air. But like, why in the world are they still doing this? Offset technology is pretty cheap. So they must have some kind of artistic reason for doing it. All right. Was that satisfying?
That was satisfying. Yeah. And, who knows, maybe who thought vinyl would ever come back? I mean,
right.
We thought of that. That used to be quote unquote defunct technology, and now it's booming.
Right. So
they can't keep up with the demand.
And I think it's sort of part of a kind of, you should pardon the expression, hipster aesthetic, to some degree, kind of a millennial / hipster aesthetic. This idea of, almost a rebellion against obsolescence. Right. It's like, there's a lot of good reasons for vinyl to come back that have nothing to do with that. But I think in general, you walk into Urban Outfitters and there's a whole bunch of crap there that you thought you were never going to see again, and I'm talking about Urban Outfitters circa, I don't know, around 2000, 2005. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. But that was the whole notion, right? Is we will revive all this stuff that you thought was dead. Old candies and old, hats and all that kind of stuff. So that was definitely an aesthetic, and it probably won't go away. Yeah, there's probably going to be some freaking goth newsletter that's set on hot lead type that'll come out. and Mark, I'm going to buy you a subscription to that. The day that happens, you are going to be getting the goth. What will the goth newsletter that's set in hot lead, what will that be called? I don't know. Pale King or something like that. Or Gale King. All right. So let's go to Cheryl. All right. Let's go to Cheryl in Plantsville, and then we'll go to Dave in Lake Como, Ohio. Hi, Cheryl. You're on the air.
Hi, Colin. I'm just wondering what your opinion might be on holding the men accountable for all these pregnancies. I really can't understand why all these pregnancies are occurring and the cost and the health and everything that the women go through just for the cost of condoms. So I'll take your answer off the air.
All right.
The men aren't being accountable. accountable at all.
No.
I mean, grandparents can do this, and friends can do this, and neighbors can do this.
So you're saying accountable.
What about the fathers?
Yeah, are you saying accountable in terms of just social pressure or social condemnation, or are you saying be held accountable in some more structured kind of way?
Oh, being held accountable in laws or anything. They're just not being accountable at all.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't comprehend it.
right. Well, I mean, there are avenues to sue for support and stuff like that, but to me, it doesn't really sort of solve the problem. Or okay, let me just back up and say, or you said you wanted to take your answer off the air. I mean, you can stay on the air if you want.
Yeah.
Off the air, okay. So I don't know exactly how to address that. We need to back up. So one of the things I've been as I get older, I think I'm more centrist. As you get older, you just kind of think, it just doesn't make any sense not to try to think this through a little bit more deeply. And I'm not saying that that always leads to centrism, but you at least start to consider all the different narratives here. So one of the things that I'm all for holding men accountable if we can figure out a way to do that. Although it's a little bit of a knife's edge, right? Because you're going to hold men accountable, but you're going to, the same philosophy that says, let's hold men accountable also says, let's give women as close to full autonomy as we can. It could be argued that if you are going to legally hold men accountable, whatever that exactly means, hold them accountable beyond what's available now, that you can't really, I don't think, do that without then cutting them in on the whole process. And I think it's why probably you don't hear about it more, that would be the fallout from that. But I just want to back up and say that although I distrust many things that came out of the Bill Clinton administration, many things, including Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is probably the thing that I distrust the most that came out of the Bill Clinton administration. But I thought safe, legal, and rare was a great concept, because it does sort of speak to maybe people who are not kind of as hardwired towards reproductive choice or whatever we want to call that, because if you say safe, legal, and rare, you acknowledge something that in certain circles is unfashionable to acknowledge. And that is that there's something usually, I think this is fair to say. It'll probably get me in trouble. There's usually something a little sad about an abortion, right? There's just, something sad happened. Either there were terrible medical consequences, or it was just an unwanted pregnancy, or the circumstances of the pregnancy, were tragic or terrifying or horrific or something, play them all out. But it's usually kind of sad, right? I don't think anybody really walked away from an abortion feeling 100% happy. And I think acknowledging that is kind of important. We don't like to do it. And there is a school of thought among the reproductive rights groups saying, don't say that because we really don't want to acknowledge that there's any kind of downside to abortion. But there is, it's a sad thing. It's not a happy day. There's a lot of times it's absolutely necessary. I completely believe in women having choice, but safe, legal, and rare, that always struck me as like a great way to think about this. So that's number one. Number two is, yes, birth control is like a huge part of this. And I really do have more patience than most people do for conservative people on the right who, I know people who fit this description, people on the right who say, yeah, I don't want to be a jerk about this, but I really do feel like it's murder. I really do feel like we're taking a life when there's an abortion. If you feel that way, then you're probably going to have pretty strong feelings about this whole idea of abortion. You're probably going to be strongly opposed to it as a moral question. And I don't think those people are bad people either. They either were brought up in a religious tradition that taught them that, or they just came to that conclusion on their own, that it's the taking of a life. Okay. I don't see how that makes them evil. Now, how they act on their beliefs can, spread across a continuum of qualities. But I don't think that's a terrible thing. But I think if you're going to feel that way and you're going to act on it and you're going to be militant about it, you got to be militant about birth control. If, in fact, we're going to acknowledge that abortion is a sad thing, that abortion to some people is the taking of a human life, then yeah, we ought to go all in on birth control as much as possible. I know we have all seen that little bit of the Clarence Thomas concurrence where it seems like maybe some other stuff is up for grabs, maybe even contraception. That would really be bad. And to me, it would be intellectually dishonest, too. I mean, we really ought to have tremendous access to birth control and a lot of education around birth control and everything being done to remove any stigma that attaches itself to birth control. I realize that hardline believing Catholics, for example, they're going to have a problem. Except there really aren't that many of them, I don't think. I think the number of Catholics who are really opposed to birth control is a very, very small subset of the overall church membership and attendance. So anyway, that's a lot of babbling, and I don't know that it necessarily answers Cheryl's question, but I do think rethinking the paradigm so that we're not standing on opposite sides of the line all the time, that's part of the problem. I mean, another part of the problem is we have a completely rogue Supreme Court who have way too much power, more power than the Supreme Court was ever meant to have, and they're just going to do whatever they want. That's a problem. But I think just in terms of the history, the modern history of the abortion debate, it's the history of people standing on opposite sides of the field, screaming at each other and not imagining that they could find any common cause. And I think there might be some, at least in some cases. All right. I mean, I want to believe that anyway. All right. So what do we got here? We got Dave in Ohio. Dave from Lake Como, Ohio. Lake Como Dave, etc. Dave, you're on the air.
I hope you're well.
It's like NoHo Hank.
Actually, right now, and it's not what I'm calling about, but Ohio has become the land of the air quality alert. I mean, we got to get out of the Midwest. Like 3 times in the last 10 days, we've had these 48-hour industrial particulate alerts, and you don't even want to go outside. It's just paradise.
Right. And who are you going to call? Not the EPA anymore.
No. It's I think it's going to decline rapidly. But as you know, being a once and future resident of Connecticut, we're just trying to clear the path to get there. But that's going to take a while.
If you want, Dave, if you want, because also I like you a lot. You're kind of a staunch supporter of the show. I'm starting a small business where we're going to ship plastic bottles of Connecticut air around the country. And, remember the woman? Who was the woman? Pants. Who was the woman who was selling her farts in jars? Who was that? Who did that? Well, so this would be like way nicer than that. Whoever was doing that, he's going to tell me in a few seconds. But we just like
a bottle of beach sand from Milford. Could that be rigged up?
We could do anything like that. But I just feel like you live in the Midwest and the air is bad. We could just send a little bottle of air out to you. You could just kind of enjoy it and think about the good old days. All right. What is it you really wanted to talk about?
Oh, that's okay. So, for that reason, because we're going to be coming back there, keep an eye on the news in Connecticut. And you may remember that back in about the end of the winter in March, there were these dire stories that started coming out in the Connecticut press that were about these spiders, the Joro spider, Joro, that were, thought to be ready to bring Connecticut and the Northeast to its knees. I mean, because these things are going to be parachuting in from, I guess, like the Southeast, where they've been already an invasive species, and they're big and they're ugly and they're scary. And, I looked them up the other day and I haven't heard another thing about them. Is this like Comet Kohoutek in the 70s, where it was a big nothing burger, just a total disappointment? Or have you seen them? Have you had reports of these spiders?
Well, first of all, now I'm thinking what we should do is you do a show episode on like Y2K and Comet Kohoutek and like all the and 2000. What was the thing? 2012. 2012 was 2012 when we were all going to die. He's nodding, yeah. So like all the things where we were supposed to die or get wiped out or something like that. And the Joro spiders are kind of a washout at this point, at least around here. Maybe I shouldn't say that too loud, because then I'm like jinxing us or something. Although supposedly, like, first of all, they're really great looking, and the other thing is they kill mosquitoes and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not really sure that we were, and I get them mixed up with the jumping worms, the jumping earthworms.
Like, I've seen those here. I've seen those on my front step.
I think
they're supposedly there's another species that eats them though, the jumping worms. So that probably there's a problem with that species if you introduce them. But that's that's a slippery slope.
All right. First of all, I'm being told Stephanie Moto is the Instagram influencer who is selling her farts. But yeah, and one of those things, I think it was the jumping worms. One of them was brought in to feed like platypuses in zoos. I think it might have been the jumping worms. They couldn't be feeding them big black and yellow spiders, right? So, and I just think, so it's really the platypus's fault. Like if the worms take over and wipe out the other worms, although you're saying there's like an uber worm that's going to kill the jumping worms.
There's another one that they say is not, it's self-harmful to the environment and to the earth and all, or to the dirt, but that it'll consume these bad worms. But I'll permit myself to be a little skeptical.
Yeah. Well, in any case, I say blame the platypuses. Platypuses have been getting a free ride for a long time. Oh, they're so interesting. They're like half a duck and half a beaver or whatever it is they're supposed to be, And it's like, oh, yeah? Well, here are some of the downsides of keeping platypuses around. It turns out they like jumping worms or whatever it was. There's some horrible thing that was brought in to feed them. I'm going to say it was jumping worms. All right, Dave, I'm going to send you some air. I'm going to send you a little bit of Connecticut air. In fact, we could make it like really Connecticut air. Like, I don't know. I could have like Jerry Brooks breathe into a vial or something. What would be like a supremely Connecticut thing to do? Although I don't think he wants exhalations, right? I think that worsens the problem of being in Ohio. He doesn't want exhalations. He doesn't want our CO2. He wants our air. He needs our air. All right. So somebody send Dave some Connecticut air. All right. We're going to have a poem. Let me give you the number. Anybody can call up about anything. I'm just reminding you of that. You could also ask that another Mr. Carp envelope be opened, although I find it very anxiety-provoking. The problem with the Mr. Carp concept is then I have to sort of figure out, these are full articles that he's sending me. I can't just sit here and read them while you wait. So, all right. So the number is 888-720-WNPR, 888-720-9677. And I don't know what else to say other than we're going to take another call right now, and then we're going to take a break. All right. Here's Michael from Durham. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
And what's on your mind?
Well, a little over 20 years ago, 1 week after 9/11, my wife, daughter-in-law, and I were in Lower Manhattan where the craters were still smoking, and I saw the faces of New Yorkers that day, and I hadn't seen that look since the morning after Robert Kennedy had been assassinated in Los Angeles. And when I came home that night, I was lying in bed, and I started to write a poem, which I didn't put to paper. I had just created the whole thing in my mind, and when I was done, that was when I set it down, and I've tried to contact the White House for the 20th year commemoration of 9/11, and that didn't seem to go anywhere. So I hope you don't mind if I choose you second. I would very much like to recite it because it means a great deal to me, and I expect to a number of other people who might be listening.
Sure. It's not terribly long, is it?
No, it's about 2-3 minutes, something like that.
2 or 3 minutes?
Maybe even less.
All right. Ideally, it's less. 3 minutes is actually an eternity in radio. But
yes, I understand.
All right.
And it's called Rest Assured. There are no people on this earth who are not welcome here, whether drawn by great ambition or propelled by stifling fear. If you are for us, we stand with you to face the world as one, to celebrate great works achieved and those still to be done. But the countenance of liberty is not so easily read by those who want to see a face of doubt or one of dread. They look for what they would impose, so fail to see what's there, and misconstrue diversity for a people unaware. The hallmark of a people free to live life as they choose presents a face of chaos to the ones who would abuse the product and the process of a system so designed to elevate the people by whose hand it is refined. Do not think we are too busy being free to lend a hand, that so many different points of view could never make a stand, for the heirs of Minutemen and pioneers will then reveal your sword of iron is no match for ours of alloy steel.
That was very, very well done, and it wasn't anything like 2 or 3 minutes. And I can't imagine why the White House didn't snap that thing up. But I am proud. I am proud to have been the first public forum in which Michael from Durham's poem about 9/11 was aired. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. Lots of people have availed themselves of the phone lines, and we will talk to them.
I'm a cork on the ocean, floating over the raging sea. How deep is the ocean? How deep is the ocean? I lost my way.
I'm bored to death, let's argue. I'm bored to death, let's argue. I'm bored to death, let's argue. What is going on with me? And maybe I was born confused, and baby I was born confused, so I don't know what's going on. Maybe nothing's going on, and everyone I know is...
All right, we're having a mild problem with the computer right now, or the computer that Mr. McPants is using to screen calls. So we're going to replace it with a hot lead linotype style call screening computer. So what'll happen is that we have one here in the building. Fortunately, it was built in 1880. So what's going to happen is you're going to call up, and then Jonathan McPants is going to, using hot lead technology, typeset your name and town and what you're calling about. And then we'll print it, and then Cap Pastor will bring it in here. So there's going to be a little bit of a delay. Hot lead, although I just read a little bit more during the break about this newspaper. It's kind of amazing. They bought one of those machines in 1902. I mean, a machine that nobody's making anymore. They bought one of those machines in and they're still printing their paper. They're still setting the type for their paper with that machine. So there. Okay. So I'm laughing just because the computer screen is just so insane right now. We really would be better off with hot lead. All right, so here we go. No, it's starting to work. It's all coming under control. Here is Phil from Tallinn. Hi, Phil. You're on the air.
Hi. How you doing, Colin?
I'm fine.
Okay. So I was wondering what you would think about pushing for to get people on local boards of education who would do good things instead of bad things. There's been this push for the past 3 years about getting people on local boards of ed to ban the boogeyman of CRT and, getting people to ban talking about gay stuff in classrooms. But I was wondering what you thought about pushing to elect people to local boards of ed who will encourage things like media literacy in the classrooms and epistemology, so we can raise a generation of people who know the difference between right and wrong and how to tell the difference between what they hope will be true and what is actually true.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, it's a laudable suggestion. I mean, we should acknowledge the fact that what really happened was, as part of the process you're describing, being on the Board of Education in a lot of places just started to suck in a way that it hadn't for a really long time. And it isn't just like SEL and CRT and all those boogeymen that don't add up to anything. But it's also stuff like masking, and other kinds of anti-COVID requirements. I mean, what happened was the Board of Education meetings were often stormed by people who would create a huge scene and start yelling and screaming, and in some cases show up on the lawn of a Board of Education member or the chairman of the board or something like that. I mean, it really is this place. I mean, I love your suggestion, except that there's a battleground now. There isn't kind of a neutral field of play right now. There's a battleground where a lot of kind of ugly and unpleasant stuff happens. So, I think in some ways we're going to have to learn to talk and listen better than we do. It's not going to be just a matter of getting better people to be on the board.
Yeah, I can say as an educator, I feel like we've really failed, an entire generation or two at getting people to know the difference between right and wrong and how to tell when they're being lied to. And I think that has caused a lot of problems for us today, just not understanding when you're being lied to or when you're being manipulated. I think people ought to be better at that. And I think it has to start when you're young.
Yeah, I mean, the media literacy stuff is, as you know, happening all over the place. But, I mean, the problem with it is, I'm trying to think of a good thing to analogize it to, but it's sort of like, you know, it's almost like talking about vaccine technology when it turns out we've got great vaccine technology. We just got a whole bunch of people who won't take vaccines. And there's a way in which the media literacy is somewhat helpful. People do need to understand better. And actually, even at the exalted level of a Yale seminar, I find I'm teaching media literacy a lot. I mean, my kids are pretty media literate and they don't know how to spot these things. Although, let me just say this. It's sort of, you know, the mote and beam thing from the Bible. It's a lot easier to spot the kind of media defect in an opposing argument. You can sort of say, for example, like, I don't know, I had a column in the Hearst papers on Sunday, and, you know, I was getting emails from people who said, well, these January 6 hearings, you know, they haven't produced any criminal convictions. And they've produced 185. You know, it's easy to spot that kind of thing. It's harder to spot the mistake we're making, right? The mistake I'm making, that you're making. It's harder to spot the thing that we absorbed and believed that wasn't true. And that's the reason we have the problem we have, is that the people, you know, who believe spurious things, they don't know that they believe spurious things, but that may include us as well.
And I think we need to teach people how to keep an eye on that very thing.
Yeah.
You know, how to take control of the difference in their ideology and fact. You know,
right. Absolutely. All right. Well, listen. Thanks for your call. There's like a whole conversation that I'm on the one hand dying to have about that, but am also aware that it will get me in a lot of trouble. So I'm going to delay that for as many weeks and months as I possibly can. All right, boy, but all these calls are kind of interesting. All right, let's start with Christine. Christine in New Haven, you have the floor.
Hi, Colin. Yes, this is Christine from New Haven. I have a suggestion for a CPTV radio program, and I want to hear what your opinion is about it. I would like to suggest that WNPR, CPTV, produce an American history show that's like a storytelling, in a storytelling format, aimed at about grade 3 to grade 5 level. Because I find that it seems that a lot of people don't know American history, even some very basic things. And I also am of the opinion that this lack of knowledge could lead to a lot of misunderstandings. So I'd love to see a kind of a fun American history show in a storytelling format.
I think it's a really good idea. I have no idea what is being done on public television for kids right now. I don't have any kids who are, I mean, my son's 32. So I don't know if there's that, maybe that kind of thing kind of exists. I mean, when you think of things from the past, like Schoolhouse Rock pops to mind, you know, where there really were efforts made to take things like American history and civics, how a bill becomes a law, all that kind of stuff, and package it up in a way that would be more attractive to kids. And I think that kind of was successful, too. The fact that people actually remember Schoolhouse Rock and can sing some of the songs from it and stuff indicates to me that that can be a very successful way to do things. I don't know how well it would work on the radio. I mean, TV is just so much better at stimulating kids than radio is. But I certainly agree also about historical illiteracy. It's once again, beware of seeing the mote in the other person's eye and missing the beam in your own. I think a lot of us are kind of blind to various parts of American history. All right, so I won't waste the time. All right, here's Kathy in Mystic. Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
What's on your mind?
Well, you were asking for a list of easy ways to understand rap music and appreciate it.
Yeah, or specifically, people think that they don't like rap, but they do like Hamilton. Hamilton, by the way, is playing here in Hartford right now at the Bushel. And as long as we're on this topic, let me just say something else that always strikes me. I mean, I'm always astonished at the people who pay some pretty exorbitant amount of money to get Hamilton tickets and don't listen to the soundtrack like 30 times before they go. Because if you don't, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. I mean, it really is it goes by very fast, and there's a lot of internal rhyming and, double entendres and puns and things like that. And so I don't know what it would be like to sit there and watch Hamilton for the first time, not having any preparation for it, because it's just so densely packed in the way that a lot of hip hop is, a lot of rap is. So anyway, the whole idea would be, like, what could we find for the person who maybe is freaked out by certain aspects of rap, including misogyny, stuff like that? What could we find that, would tell people, show people why they could really learn to like this particular style?
Okay. I was a parent escorting junior high school kids, middle school kids, on a field trip back in the 90s. And all of a sudden, the kids in the back started reciting what I thought was poetry. And I thought, wow, they've memorized verse after verse after verse of this. And what it was DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince doing Parents Just Don't Understand.
Which, and it is poetry. It just happens to be a different kind of poetry. But yeah.
Right. They loved it. And it was funny and relatively harmless and had no misogyny.
Right. So I really would like to do something like I'm not qualified to do this. I mean, I'm sort of qualified in this in the sense that I listen to a certain amount of hip hop, and I'm probably not going to listen to the kind of stuff that strikes people, that makes people think that they don't like rap. So I would listen to like Black Star or something like that, or I would listen to, I think Kick Push by Lupe Fiasco is a great example of a song that it's essentially all rap, but it's got an interesting orchestration to it. The theme, which is about skateboarding, two skateboarders who fall in love, seems to be a pretty innocuous theme. That would be kind of a nice song to, I'm sure there's 10 of those. I just don't happen to be able to rattle them all off. And obviously no Kanye. All right, so that'll get people started. All right, here's Mike in Woodbury, and then we'll take a break. Hi, Mike.
Hi, how are you, Colin?
Just fine.
So I would like your opinion on the fraught issue of whether or not Joe Biden should run again.
No, he should not. No, he should not.
I agree. But here's some issues. If he decides not to, when should he do that? Because if he does it too soon, he's immediately a lame duck. If he does it too late, he doesn't allow for other candidates to, come to the fore. And I think if he decides that he should run, I think there's a real danger of being a situation like Jimmy Carter and Ted Kennedy, where they say, no, there's no way this is going to work, so I'm going to put my name out there, and that could be more than one person, and that would be a disaster, I think. You agree with me. I mean, I like him. I think he's doing a much better job than he gets credit for, but he's going to be 82 when he runs, and that's just too old for that job. I mean, it's the worst job in the world. And,
I mean, back during, I guess I can't exactly pinpoint the month and year, but during the run up to the last election, at some point I did a column, might have been in 2019. I wrote a column saying that Joe Biden is like, how Subaru owners tell you, man, I got 244,000 miles out of my Subaru, and it was still, he's that Subaru. We before he was ever elected president, we already got 400,000 miles out of Joe Biden. He was in the Senate forever. And he was vice president. And really, I never thought he was the right nominee in the first place for that reason. Thanks. You've been a great car, Joe Biden. I'm going to leave you by the side of the road, unscrew the license plates, and walk away. So Pants thinks after Election Day this year is when Biden says he's not going to seek re-election, and that's probably a good rule of thumb. Now, the other thing,
after the midterms,
yeah, right after the midterms.
That's 2 more years of being a lame duck, though. I mean,
well, look, first of all, one thing that you could ask yourself, Mike, is how could things be worse than they are right now? Like, how could his approval ratings be worse? How could the general understanding of his presidency be more devalued than it is at the moment? And sometimes it'd be interesting to go back and look at LBJ and see when he announced this and what the overall effect was. Because like a lot of these problems aren't going to go away, but sometimes if somebody says, look, I'm not running for re-election, his approval numbers could go up. There's nothing we like better than somebody whom we will never be asked to vote for again. Mm-hmm. Hillary Clinton's approval ratings plummeted the minute it was clear that she was going to run for president. As a Secretary of State, she actually had decent approval ratings. But the minute it was clear she was going to seek the presidency, boom. Now, there are some other real reasons for that. But, the other thing that could happen that I've thought about a lot is if Biden became, because of his age and maybe some growing infirmity, unable to keep going, then imagine that he steps down. Kamala Harris becomes acting president of the United States, gets sworn in as president, and then she has, let's say a year or a year and a half to. She's got really lousy approval ratings too. I don't think she's a particularly good candidate. The only thing that would help her would be if she became president and did better than Biden, or inflation kind of got better on its own, and Ukraine, maybe she turned out to be a hawk on Ukraine more than he is, or whatever. That would be a really interesting thing to watch unfold. It could be interesting like a success or interesting like a train wreck. It's a little bit hard to know in advance. But anyway, food for thought, all of it. But no, Biden should not seek another term. And yeah, there has to be enough room, as Mike is saying, for there to be a meaningful primary process. Harris, I think she's so weak right now in the polls and stuff like that. I don't think it's a coronation. I don't think it's hers to lose. Anyway, let's take a break. We'll come back. We won't have much time. But the number, 888-720-WNPR, 888-720-9677.
I've been playing out a lot of hypotheticals in my mind. I've been writing your name down next to mine. Been imagining all the things you and I could do. I've seen all the possibilities in my dreams. You're alone when you should really be next to me. Baby, let's not wait and see. Immediate action isn't necessary. It's a fatal attraction. It's a little scary.
All right, we are back. Once again, we have time for maybe two more calls. 888-720-WNPR, 888-720-9677. Thanks to Kat Pastor. She's our technical producer today, and just about every day, and we like it that way. Jonathan McPants is up here screening calls and also keeping me informed about what I'm talking about, or what I think I'm talking about. So we figured out LBJ announced that he wouldn't run March 31st, 1968, so 7 months before the election. And according to Jonathan McPants, his approval rating went up from 36 to 49, like overnight, basically. So this tends to confirm I've believed for years that the least possible, the most unpopular politicians are the ones we're being asked to vote for. If you want to be popular, don't run. All right, here's Bill from Stratford. We might have time for Nancy from Southampton. Bill, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, you're there. Good.
Okay. My name's Bill from Stratford. A quick story that I just can't make heads or tails out of. Last Thursday, my wife and I were going to babysit for our little grandchildren. We were going to Fruit 8, and there was an accident ahead of us. All traffic came to a stop, and after about 15 or 20 minutes of waiting, I decided to walk up to where the accident was. There were many emergency vehicles there. As I got to within 30 or 40 yards, a state trooper, a woman, maybe in her mid-40s, very stocky, walked toward me, and of all the things she could have said to me, she said, "Do you have a reason for being here?" Very aggressively. And I was so taken aback, I was quiet for a moment. And then she said, "You need to turn around and leave right now." And I was quiet again for a moment. And I said, "I'm here for information." She said, "Turn around now, or I'm giving you a ticket for interference." And I finally put up my hands and I said, "Okay." And I turned around and she watched me as I walked away. And I thought to myself, where's Officer Friendly? what was I doing wrong? I'm 70 years old. I happen to be white. I was wearing a "We Don't Talk About Bruno" shirt, and I weigh 165 pounds. I mean, I was no threat to anybody. I don't understand that with that officer.
Well, you were not a threat to anybody unless they were trying to talk about Bruno. In which case you would become a threat. Also, interference is technically a 15-yard penalty. I don't know that you can get a ticket for it. But, let me just say this. She expressed herself in the wrong way, in the wrong tone. There's just, not a good way to do it. I mean, I sort of get her point, which is what they want everybody to do is stay in their cars and not create even worse problems with people walking all over an interstate or a state highway. I forget where you were. But, it just doesn't help them if everybody kind of gets out and starts playing detective and stuff like that. So I get that. But there's no reason to talk to a citizen like that. And, I don't know. I was talking
Maybe she was nervous.
She could have been, or just bad day, long day, hot day, crabby day. We all have that. But, you are in a kind of a public-facing role when you're a state trooper. And it just for the sake of societal comity, there's a great case to be made for being as nice as possible. I always go back to my old friend Jim Strelacci, who was the chief of police in West Hartford. I was saying this over the weekend in connection with the horrible Akron incident. But Strelacci always had this rule of thumb where he said to his officers, treat everybody as if they're a potential witness, not as if they're a potential suspect. Which, that's a pretty good rule of thumb. I like it. All right, so it looks like Nancy from Southampton is going to get the last word here today. Hi, Nancy. You're on the air.
Hi. I just wanted to say round of applause to the guy that read his poetry earlier. It was wonderful. He deserves gold stars all around. And to think he wrote it for 9/11 and how timely it is now, that's almost scary, but I was just very moved. I thought it was a wonderful poem.
Well, that's
all
great.
I wanted to say.
Thanks for doing that kind of close listening. Also, it's a poem that he wrote in his head. That he composed it in his head, according to him. I mean, there's a great tradition of that. John Milton had to write everything in his head because, he couldn't. He was blind and had gout and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, all of Homer's poetry, assuming there was one person who was Homer, was all kind of oral. Wasn't written down anywhere. Yeah. So, but it's still writing stuff in your head. It was very impressive. Well, thanks for being a supporter of locally sourced poetry. And so we are about to say farewell. I can tell you we have some exciting stuff coming up in the next couple of days. Tomorrow's show is going to be something I've been talking about and writing about for a while. It's about how the January 6th hearings were created consciously to be really good television. And really, if you go back to Watergate, Michael Schützen, the historian says, Watergate, it didn't happen in our lives, not the way inflation or even like the Vietnam War happens in our lives. Watergate happened on television, and so you want it to be really good television. And that's been the case all along. So Frank Rich and I have been having conversations about this since the Iran-Contra hearings. So he's going to be back. Hopefully we're going to record with him tomorrow. And then James Poniewozik, who's just sort of the demigod of this whole topic. James Poniewozik of the New York Times will be with us. So we got that. Lily Tyson, senior producer, she's got a show about monuments. I'm not 100% sure where we're going with that. And then on Friday, we're going to talk about The Old Man. No, not me. We're not talking about me. We're talking about the Jeff Bridges series on Hulu. Thank you. But it's really amazing. It's really good. All right. We have to go. Thanks for playing.